Hey there, Andrea Seydel here. I hope you're doing as good as can be. I am the author of Saving You is Killing Me, Loving Someone with an Addiction. I'm also the founder of the SYKM community, and I'm so excited because I'm highlighting such a great book today. And we're going to jump right in. So, basically, we're going to talk all about balancing your discipline, how you can find tools for spiritual growth on a road that's less traveled. So, how disciplined are you in your life, right? It's amazing how sometimes we fall off, the bandwagon, or we maybe, lose motivation and it's hard to stay on track or, do what might be right for us. So we want to make sure that we're focused on our goals. We want to remove temptations that are all around us. And you know what? Sometimes we need to recover from mistakes as well, right? So sometimes, we're willing to keep trying and we're willing to tolerate the discomfort that might come from perseverance. And that discomfort actually helps us to grow and to get better. But there's specific ways in life that are like a road that's less traveled, takes a lot of effort and courage. So it's not an easy path, right? When we want to go on this path of growth and enlightenment, and we want to move forward and have this idea of spiritual growth and just growth in general in our life. It's actually one of the elements of well-being is accomplishment and growth, and having that nice growth mindset really helps us in many ways in our life. So the path is not easy though, right? So the path to enlightenment is far more rewarding, but it's not easy. So we are going to talk about, this idea. You've heard the expressions take the high road or the road to hell, or, take the scenic route. There's so many metaphors relating to roads in our life, right? But there's this one road that we're going to talk about, and that's the idea of the road that's less traveled. And in the book, The Road Less Traveled, Scott Peck teaches us how to live a more fulfilling life just by practicing discipline and developing a better understanding of love and religion and grace in our life. And now this book is so fantastic because it really does let us find out what the steps are that we need to take in order to grow, in order to become more balanced, and dare I say it, the best version of the person that we want to be. And so we're going to jump into this. In this book summary, we'll literally take a trip down this road and we'll learn how to apply concepts that can lead us down this path of spiritual growth. We're going to discover basically an approach that will help us find out the power of delaying gratification. Now, this is huge. And I'm obsessed with positive psychology. So, delaying gratification is one of the tools or the approaches that can actually help us tap into our power and really meet our goals and things like that, and have this wonderful spiritual growth. Now, it takes effort. You're going to see everything takes effort here. It's not an easy road. It's the road less traveled. And then we're also going to discover, and we're going to uncover how love is something more than just a feeling. And we're going to talk all about that. He talks about that within his book. And he also talked about why being lazy is a common human trait, and that it prevents our growth. And it's just very common because we're human. So let's jump into this book summary and some of the key takeaways and all the actionable nuggets that you might be able to apply to your life right away. So, having a better life starts with practicing what's called self-discipline and developing the habit of delayed gratification. So, in his book, Scott Peck really teaches us that it's simple. It's a simple fact of life that each day is going to come with problems, struggles, challenges. We're not immune to it. And I always say that in the positive psychology world, right? It's not always sunshine and butterflies. So once we recognize this, then we're better able to find solution, to be solution focused, and to really help ourselves grow and learn from this. And, sometimes if we live in the delusion that, oh my gosh, like this is happening to me again, or look at all the struggles I'm enduring here, then that makes us go into a place of learned helplessness. Basically, it's like, oh, well. So the idea here is to recognize that struggle, challenge, it's a part of life. It is a wonderful way actually that you can shift your perspective that's actually healthier for you. It's the best tool that you can give yourself, because the second you know that, you know what, life is going to be presenting challenges, that we are not immune to struggle, it immediately gives us this opportunity to practice self-discipline and to find the tools that are going to help you move out of the challenge and the struggle. And so one of the tools he talks about in his book is getting familiar with this idea of delayed gratification. So let's talk about that. So what is delayed gratification and how can it help us? So no one likes to wait for something good, right? I mean, I know I have experienced that. It's like we don't want to wait for it. We want that dessert even before dinner if we could have it. We tend to live our lives according to this same philosophy, right? This way, of life. It's called, basically, it's like play now, pay later. It's like, okay, let's play now and then I'll take the consequence. Like, now let's go out and have fun. Maybe you skip a class so you can hang out with your friends, or you delay studying so you can go out and have fun, and you deal with the consequences later, right? So instead of focusing and studying, you'll deal with the consequences later. So we're playing now and we pay for it later. So this is the idea here. So what we want to do is, it's actually hard to delay gratification because we're wired to seek pleasure, right? We're wired to avoid pain. So to put it another way, like, we're controlled by our impulses. We're controlled by these impulses of pleasure immediately. We want that. We want to play now. And so this is challenging, right? So delayed gratification is actually the act of resisting an impulse, or it's about taking an immediate available reward in hopes of obtaining a more value reward in the future. Okay, I just got really sciencey on you. So basically what it is you're delaying a reward right now because you know the other desired reward in the future of that delay is going to be that much sweeter. It's going to be that much better. And what comes to mind too is the marshmallow experiment in the positive psychology world. And what they did is they basically delayed, if kids wanted to wait, instead of getting one marshmallow, they'll get more marshmallows. But so many people had troubles, so many of these children had troubles delaying and waiting for if they waited, they'll get more marshmallows. So anyway, we want that instant gratification, right? So this is the idea here, is like avoiding, some of the ways that we can do this is by avoiding distractions, staying motivated, and having a solid connection to our why. The why of our goals is critical. And they're all examples of delaying gratification in favor of a long-term achievement, right? So we have to delay, for example, if we're talking about weight management, we might have to delay some cookies and chips, right? For the outcome in the future that is fantastic, where we put on that bathing suit, we feel really good in it. So the idea here is this idea of practicing delayed gratification. And it's not easy. It's a road less traveled, so to speak. So it's hard to put off something mildly fun or pleasurable now to gain something in the future. It's challenging for us, and science has confirmed this. So, for example, you could eat a whole row of cookies now, or you could practice delayed gratification and stick to your healthy eating and weight management efforts. So, now let's go off on a little bit of a positive psychology side note. So, the more aware that we are of our autonomic behavior reactions to impulses, the better prepared we can to delay those impulses. So, according to positive psychology, one of the easiest ways to begin exercising I call it your delayed muscle, or your delaying muscles, is to practice mindfulness. It's kind of undoing this idea of automatic thinking or automatic pilot thinking, and being aware of, what it is, what does trigger you, or what impulses do you have? What are you procrastinating? What are you putting off? Right. So that is one thing, just by being mindful and self-aware is really, really crucial. Now, this is a positive psychology tangent I'm going on, but it wasn't necessarily in the book, but it is this idea of delayed gratification is a psychological concept. So tapping into also and using your strengths and your values, what you value and what are your strengths can really help you build that delay muscle as well. Like for instance, maybe you value productivity. So an example might be of this delay would be like, I love how it feels to get things done too much to put this off right now, right? I know how good I'm going to feel at the end of the day to accomplish these things. So I'm going to focus on them. So it's amazing how we can use our strengths and our values to actually help us delay and use this idea of delayed gratification. So yeah, so you want to basically start practicing this idea of delayed gratification by looking at your habits, perhaps prioritizing your goals, celebrating all those mini successes along the way, and notice the compound effect of your daily efforts is really, really powerful. And also create what's called an avoidance plan. So plan to avoid, so I keep using the cookie example. Can't tell I love cookies. Anyway, so you might avoid putting cookies or purchasing your favorite cookies and putting them in the cupboard if you're creating an avoidance plan. Like that might be your plan, is to not have them. Out of sight, out of mind, I always say. So an avoidance plan is a good one. One of my favorite positive psychology interventions and this idea of delayed gratification is you're going to face challenges. You're going to face obstacles, right? So it's hard when you're trying to delay this gratification. So another great tool is this if then exercise, and it's basically saying, if this happens, then I will do this, right? So you want to have that plan in place. And so it gives you almost like a framework. So you have alternative responses right away, ready for you, so that when that impulse presents themselves, you're going to have a plan in place. So for example, you might say, if I want another snack, then I will first do 10 push-ups or walk around the block and drink a glass of water. So you can see how powerful this if then exercise is. Now, this was not in the book, but this is just a side positive psychology little intervention or something that you can do that really helps this idea of delayed gratification, right? Buffers you a bit of space and prepares you, makes you psychologically prepared when the impulses are there, when you want that instant gratification, and it allow that buffer time for delay. So sometimes we simply have to bear down and deal with the tricky stuff or the difficult stuff that life has to offer, that we're faced with, right? And know that there is going to be reward, right? There's going to be end results, reward in the future. We want to forfeit this immediate gratification because we know a future outcome is that much more valuable and that much more rewarding. So that is one of the concepts within his book, is this idea of delaying self-discipline and practicing self-discipline and developing a habit of delaying gratification, making it a habit. And that's really for helping us with spiritual growth. So another thing that he talks about is that discipline also means accepting responsibility, being truthful, and striking a healthy balance in your life. So now, how many times have you been, maybe I know when we talk a lot about addiction, people are in denial. They perhaps don't admit that they have a problem, and or maybe we don't take responsibility for what it is, our reality is, the situation that we're in. So the idea here is to take full responsibility, be truthful of where you are. And then it's all about creating this healthy balance in our life. So delayed gratification is just one tool that can help you bring about discipline in your life. It's like, real self-discipline requires that you accept responsibility for your life as well. So this is really important. Self-discipline is this dedication to truth, meaning that you're getting really honest and you're looking at the reality of your life in a very honest manner. It's like, what, maybe I do drink too much, or what, maybe my life has become unmanageable loving someone with an addiction. I need to get honest with this. Or maybe, it's just really delving in, maybe I the reason I'm overweight is because, I ate all those chips on the weekend, or maybe the reason, it's really getting honest with yourself. And I'm just, pulling a whole bunch here. But it's all about finding that tool that for the discipline and the self-discipline and taking responsibility and accepting your responsibility. And so in his book, he talks all about how can you get honest with yourself, right? Decide where your life is unbalanced, right? And use discipline. Discipline is the key, but you got to get honest and take responsibility for your life, and that nobody else is going to do that. And then striking a balance, using this discipline, and getting truthful, right? And so delayed gratification, the author kind of talks about it like, one of the things he talked about was like his experience, like, he had riding his bike full speed down a hill, and, he felt this amazing rush, and he was reluctant to give up this ecstatic feeling, which is why he wound up crashing into the forest. So as he learned, it can be painful to abandon the things that give us a rush. It's painful sometimes to let go of those things that give us an immediate rush. But losing balance can really hurt us even more. So losing this fine balance can actually hurt us even more, ruin our lives, change our lives, affect us in so many ways. So discipline is about accepting responsibility, being truthful with ourselves, and then striking a balance, a healthy balance in our lives. And, so how can you get honest with yourself, right? Decide where your life is not feeling balanced, and then apply discipline, right? It means letting go and giving up unhealthy habits. What unhealthy habits do you have right now? I know I have a few. And so it's hard to get honest, right? So what extreme behaviors, is throwing your life out of balance? Or maybe not even extreme. Maybe it's slow and steady, something that you're doing that's throwing your life out of balance. So being honest with yourself, like these are the things that are affecting you, right? Maybe they add thrill to your life. Maybe they add, pleasure right now, but in the end, it doesn't turn out well. So where in your life are, something that's giving you a rush maybe now, and adding some thrill to your life right now, or, and affecting you negatively in the end, or it's not going to turn out well if you keep going on this path. So that's the idea in this section. Discipline is all about accepting responsibility, being truthful for what's out of balance, and striking a healthy balance in our life. So that is a good one, isn't it? Okay, so the next part is love is closely linked to our spiritual growth and our self-discipline, right? When we love ourselves, we're more likely to treat ourselves with this respect and honor, our needs and things like that. So he talks a lot about this in his book, and that there's so much that's been written on this idea of love. But Scott Peck, in his book, he says, love is having the will to nurture your spiritual growth, basically looking after yourself, right? In this way, you can, look at love as an important part of your evolution, of your spiritual growth, of your teaching and learning, right? And so it's really important. And he talks all about this idea of love as a state of being, and that it's important to understand that we first need to love ourselves before we can love anyone else. And so that is one of the main messages in his book. He talks all about too, like a parent teaching a child how to behave in a disciplined manner. For this to happen, the parent has to practice discipline themselves and act in a certain way. So this growth is really important, right? And this idea of being an example of loving yourself first is really crucial. And it's at the heart of it, right? And then he talks in his book, and I love the way he put it, is that it's like a storage tank full of energy when we are, practicing love. When you have love in your heart, it's like you're filling up your energy tank, right? That love is not a feeling, but an action, basically, that requires attention. And that's what he talks about within his book too. So yeah, so he talks about that, and he also talks about this idea of action and showing, and that loving someone means giving them full attention and supporting their growth. Loving yourself is about giving yourself attention and supporting your growth. So we need to love ourselves first before we can love others as well. Main message here. So I'm curious, like, how can loving yourself help you, and your spiritual growth? And also, how can loving yourself help you with self-discipline? Right? It's amazing. Some of the things that we put into our body or some of the things that we do are not good for our health. And it's not a form of self-love and care. So it's amazing how just reflecting on that can really help us in many, many ways. Then he does talk all about religion, and that it's essentially our personal worldview. It doesn't have to necessarily fall into a religious category, but religion is very important for us to grow and expand and gain, and we can gain new perspective all the time. So he does question, like, when you think of religion, what comes to your mind? And for many of us, he says that, it's a set of rules, it's rituals or ritual practices, it's being part of a group that believes or worships a God like. And so, regardless of your experience, is what he says within his book, too, is that regardless of your experience and the perspective that you hold, he really does emphasize this idea that we have the capacity for spiritual growth, no matter what religious category you find yourself in. So if we allow for new experiences to inform our outlook on life, then we are really going to open up our perspective, and we're going to, open up our world. And I love the way he put it in his book. He talked all about, think of yourself as a scientist. You're constantly questioning and exploring and investigating all that's around you and using this information to inform you and educate you and help you grow. And that's a really unique perspective, right? This mentality can help you learn, grow, and evolve. And that's a nice perspective. So don't let past experiences blind you to the beauty of your spiritual realm, like blind you to the beauty of what life has to offer. Okay, so another thing he talks about in his book is this idea of ordinary occurrences can illuminate the extraordinary phenomenon of grace. So instances like synchronicity and serendipity, I'm sure you've heard about it. And so he talked about this idea of grace in our life. And you've heard the song, I'm sure, Amazing Grace, and that it's basically a common phenomena. It's a force that protects us, that helps us, when we're in the most trying conditions. This idea of grace enables us to survive. It enables us to handle even some of the most adverse conditions. And Scott Peck talks all about, and he suggests that grace is more than just this amazing resilience that we have, or this survival instinct. It's also this force beyond our consciousness that nurtures our growth as human beings. He offers that we can see things as grace, and that everything is unfolding. It ensures us to, like, we have this urge to grow and learn, and that this grace is within us. And there's so many amazing things that are unexplainable that are around us. Like, it's no coincidence that we have amazing resilience. It's no coincidence that we have survival instinct, and that there's this wonderful drive for growth as humans, and we are constantly being urged to grow. So, have you ever had a dream of a friend and then you suddenly, shortly after, run into that person? Or, you're looking for direction in something in your life, and that perfect book shows up, at the checkout. Synchronicity is this idea and this example of grace in action. There's grace, like, happens, like, wow, that's so cool. Like, that was meant to be there almost. And so he talks about this in his book, and that synchronicity is basically the frequent occurrence of highly unlikely events that actually support us, that actually it's like grace. It's like hard to explain it, but it just happens. When the events like this happen, they're beneficial. They make us feel good. They help us in many ways. It's an act of what's called serendipity, right? Where it's the gift of finding valuable or agreeable things that you're not even looking for. It just shows up for you. So this is the ordinary occurrences really illuminates this idea of grace and really helps us and guides us. And he talks a lot about that within his book. So the final point, the wonderful final point here within his book, one of the key takeaways is this idea that, you know what? Humanity is lazy, right? It prevents us from attaining such wonderful spiritual growth. We're not always wanting to do the work, right? So laziness might be the biggest thing standing between us and spiritual growth, standing between us and what we want for ourselves. So he talks all about the original sin and how it's laziness and that we're not taking the time or the energy, to properly develop ourselves, right? So it's this idea of we avoid things, we make bad decisions instead of making good ones, right? So this idea is we need to be really diligent about questioning ourselves, about getting to the bottom of why we're doing what we're doing. And so this idea is instead of like this lack of energy for growth, is, fear getting in the way of change. We're not wanting to do the work involved, right? We don't want to move out of our comfort zone. So many people find this perspective of change threatening, or they don't want to bother because they don't want to put the effort in. And what he's saying in his book is that humanity generally, they don't want to take this road, this path. It's, that's why it's the road less traveled. And so this idea though is that it's easier to, ignore a new perspective than to take a new heart or new direction. It's easier, just to have instant pleasure than to do the work for a bigger, stronger, amazing, more outcome. So fear and laziness get in the way of our spiritual growth, and we remain stagnant, we remain stuck. And so I'm curious, like, where has laziness or fear or inability to do the required work gotten in the way of your growth? I'm probably guessing a lot. I know it happens to me, it still happens to me, it's happened in the past, where this idea of, I want this so bad. But then if I really were to get honest with myself, well, Andrea, you haven't really done the work to get you there. So if you want that, you can have that. But are you willing to do the work to get you there? And just acknowledging our resistance is really key, right? And we can start on our way to overcoming, thinking traps and obstacles that might stand in our way. And so that is basically it. That is this book in a nutshell. So living a life of spiritual growth requires a loving nature. It requires openness to new perspective. It's really including all this idea of understanding this force of grace and serendipity and synchronicity, and that life will unfold for us, and we have to trust that. It's about taking the road less traveled and recognizing that it's not easy. It's going to take effort, it's going to take will, and it's going to really develop this strong sense of self-discipline, and self-discipline is going to help us with this growth. So fortunately, the tools of self-discipline and delayed gratification and can really help us with this idea of adding to our life, bringing about balance, bringing about the path that we really want for ourselves. And that's it. That is like that in a nutshell. So taking the road less traveled, bottom line, isn't easy, right? It takes effort, will, and a strong sense of self-discipline. But we also need to remember this idea of balancing our discipline. So here's some food for thought for you. So too much of anything is undesirable, right? So it's really even discipline. Too much discipline is undesirable. So don't be afraid to add some flexibility into your life. If you're overly rigid about working out and your eating habits, make sure you add some change from time to time. That's one of the major takeaways or actionable nuggets from this book is looking at things from a perspective of like, what's healthy discipline mean to you, and how is that going to help you in your life with your growth? So that's it, my friends. Again, I'm Andrea Seydel. Thank you so much for listening.